I'd like to start this discussion by touching back on the nature of Pluto in our houses. Pluto is the energy of change, death, transformation, and it carries the frequency of chaos, deception, viruses, and coercion. As Pluto moves into any zodiac sign, it will mark that generation with the themes displayed in its placement. It's in its nature to bring about major changes through the destruction of certain aspects reflected in its position. You see a kind of ebb and flow of the energy as it brings about a transformation of entire generations of humankind. The frequency of Pluto manifests as these generations come of age. With Pluto in Libra, which was 1971 to 1983, currently aged 39 to 51 in 2022 when this video was made, we start to feel the more spiritual aspects of our generation as we move away from Pluto in Virgo and into Pluto in Libra. Being a cardinal air sign, it has a very powerful impact on our future generations. People in this generation are highly intellectual, but at the mercy of their connections to others. Bringing connection and balance in all forms of relationships is this generation's mission. Changes they make in society will permanently set the path that humanity is destined to walk. Being that they're ruled by Venus, balance and connection, relationships, and love are their primary focus. This generation placed serious emphasis of the transformation on how they connect in relationships and what being connected with others means. Pluto in Libra was introduced to a world where people with differences in race, gender, and culture were already present in their daily lives. They had a different perspective on these issues than previous generations. For Pluto in Libra, differences were what made them unique. During the 80s, they explored those differences through creative expression. MTV became the model for pop culture. The popular names of the time came from all over the world and were a melting pot of color and culture. While Pluto in Virgo explored their gender roles in pop culture with women redefining what it meant to be powerful and men exploring the boundaries of sexuality in flamboyant clothing, hair, and makeup, Pluto in Libra observed, learned, and tried to tag along. The ideologies that their Pluto in Leo and Virgo parents tried to impose on them were rejected. Pluto in Libra had their own way of doing absolutely everything. They're very non-traditional in nature and weren't drawn to the status quo. They pursued their own agendas outside of the previous generation's ideologies and divisions. Remember, our Pluto and Libra are seeking balance in all things, so they may inadvertently go overboard, possibly even to the point of destruction, with the influence of Pluto causing major upheaval. With regards to their relationships, they would find that a connection which was balanced was incredibly powerful for them, and ones that weren't were totally destructive for our Pluto and Libra. So many of this generation experienced destructive relationship connections that were a catalyst for their further exploration, understanding, and growth. They learned as children that the adults weren't really adults. They knew how to act like adults, but Pluto and Libra could see that they didn't really know how to be adults. The previous generations were so absorbed with the things happening in their own lives, they kind of forgot about their children. Enter the latchkey child. Pluto and Libra were a generation of children that had to take care of themselves. Many were left to their own devices and got into trouble of all kinds, including, but not limited to, drugs, which were heavily prevalent in the youth culture of this generation. They managed their own lives and learned how to survive in the process. Many played the role of the adult or parental figure in their relationships with their parents and in some cases with their siblings. Because of Venus's influence, Pluto and Libra were suckers for love. Maybe I should just say suckers. They wanted so much to bring together meaningful connections. They moved through relationships much faster than previous generations. They struggled to find genuine expressions of love and true connection. Many had issues with abandonment and codependency that made their journey a learning experience from which they would filter their sense of self. Pluto in Libra explored the meaning of relationship by engaging in several and alternative relationships. Divorce rates were rising with previous generations. The 80s is where we saw divorce rates peak and begin to decline as we moved into the 90s. The idea of marriage was not so well accepted among Pluto and Libra. We began to see some of this generation forego traditional relationship ideals to pursue careers and a single life. The concept of family had already begun to disintegrate with the previous generations. Pluto in Virgo had redefined what it meant to raise a child with two separate parents. Pluto in Libra explored and made us aware of the many possibilities. All families have a special dynamic, and not one is like another. That's something that Pluto in Libra addressed for us. There are endless possibilities as to how our lives may converge with one another, and the beauty of it all is in the connection we share. As for the Pluto in Libra that chose to have families, they placed incredible emphasis on the happiness and well-being of their children. This generation is unique in that they literally worshiped their children. The term helicopter parent became a popular phrase for parents that were overly careful to the point of absurdity with their own children. The concept of the participation medal also became quite popular. They didn't want their sweet little Pluto and Sagittarius babies to not feel special. They tried to even the playing field. No losers, no winners either. They removed the threats and spoiled their kids with the attention and love they felt they lacked. It was possibly too much, because although the Pluto in Sagittarius is cool and confident, they also think everyone else should think so and bend to their will, like their Pluto in Libra and Pluto in Scorpio parents demonstrated they could do as children. With the influence of Sagittarius, they have a tendency to be unrealistic and hypersensitive. It was Pluto in Libra that cultivated these things through their strong nature to nurture. As painful as it is for all involved, it is one of the factors that is driving our society to become more aware in many aspects of life. It's also the nature of Pluto to cause an overexpression of energies, which is explanation for why we see such extremes of these frequencies with the evolution of our generations. Through the current generations of Pluto, we've discovered that there's been a struggle for power between Pluto in Leo and Pluto in Virgo generations. This struggle has pushed Pluto in Libra to the ropes. In career, they started out being told by Pluto and Leo that they weren't old enough. Then Virgo generation came along and said they were too old. It was believed that Pluto and Scorpio generation, Virgo's children, held the key and needed to be at the forefront of things. It became harder for this generation to find a place in society and to just get by. They were the caretakers for everyone, but there was no one taking care of them or looking out for their interests. This is a lesson on independence for this generation. Pluto in Leo and Pluto in Virgo have gotten drunk on power, and Pluto in Libra generation has allowed themselves to be overshadowed and pushed around by them. In turn, there has been nothing and no one to end or balance the endless tug of war happening between Pluto in Leo and Pluto in Virgo. A tug of war that has limited our ability to get past simple social concepts as a society and limited our ability to grow in abundance through our communities. There are fewer Pluto and Libra generation active in our government today. That's concerning because they represent the balance we need to move forward successfully as a collective. Libra is air energy, which translates to thought and superconsciousness. This generation moves us into another era of human consciousness as a collective. Using their real-life relationship experience to draw from, they'll offer something to our collective which will open the door to stronger connections among humankind and innovations that we can't even imagine. When writing the script for this video, I had trouble finding significant people and things that identified this generation. Most times I found that it was Pluto in Virgo that was gaining exposure in culture during the most notable times of this generation. Did we accidentally overlook them? The lesson may be for people of this generation to stop allowing themselves to be overshadowed by other generations. It has been a great disservice to all involved. They must have the courage to stand up for our future generations, identify that which is balanced, genuine, true, honest, and meaningful, then find the strength to eliminate those things which are not. They must learn to use their voice to communicate direction for future generations to move away from the destructive concepts and actions of their predecessors. Perhaps witnessing the result of the destructive ideologies and neglect brought about by our generations will be enough to shake our Libra generation into action. It's time for them to actually be the adults and take their place in shaping our future. How have the children of Pluto and Virgo, Pluto and Scorpio, impacted our path forward? Tune in Sunday at 7 p.m. to continue the journey with Pluto. Be sure to watch the other Plutonian-related content on this channel by visiting my Generations playlist. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel.